Hello and welcome to a quick tutorial of how to make a gun in Minecraft. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make your own little pistol in Minecraft using some basic Datapack knowledge. We're going to go over how to generate this effect, which is quite deadly and effective. We're only going to be looking into this at a surface level in this video. If you want to see more details, there's a document written to supplement this information. But without any further ado, let's get into it. So the first thing you're going to want to do is have Minecraft open up to 1.15.2. As of recording this video, that is the most current version of Minecraft, and this tutorial will work with any version of 1.15, and so far any version after it. You can get this to work in previous versions, but it will be much dirtier and harder to do. So first thing you need to do is head into single player. We're going to create a new world, set it to creative, and change our name to something that's easy to remember. And now we need to make sure that we have a nice easy workspace, so we're going to turn off structures unless you want to kill villagers and set our world to super flat. We're going to allow cheats, and we don't want a bonus chest, and then we're just going to create a new world. Once we're in, this is what a super flat world looks like. As you can see, there's nothing around us. It's the beginning of day, and all we've got are slimes and slimes. Not even any animals yet. Now that your world is fully generated, you're going to want to head to %appdata% in your file browser. It'll bring you to this folder, and we want to go into our .minecraft folder. We want to find our saves folder. Your folder probably will have less than mine does in it. And then we want to find the name of our new world we created. I named mine Pew Pew 2. We're going to head into it, and we're going to head into the Datapacks folder. Once you've found your world's Datapacks folder, you're going to want to go and download the example Datapack. A link will be in the description. You're going to get that zip, and you're going to want to extract all. After you do, it should automatically open your extracted file. If we look in here, we'll see that there's just a data and a pack file. So we actually want to go one up and copy this and paste it in our world's Datapack folder. And so from this point, we've actually done all the setup we need to do so that now we can start coding. So let's head in, and if you actually look around in this pack, you'll notice that there's quite a bit here. There's this file. This just describes what the Datapack is to the game. You'll see we have two namespaces here. You don't need to worry about what's in here. All we're doing here is setting up some functions to run every time a Datapack loads and every time it ticks. What we're going to be working with though is in here in functions. These tags pertain to something we'll use later, but this tutorial doesn't talk about how to use JSON or MBT data or anything like that, as it's far outside the scope of what we need to learn here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is copy and paste this template file that we have. Oops. And you're going to want to rename it to Init. What Init will do is it's set up to run every time the pack is loaded in the Minecraft namespace that we showed before. The template file that we copied from doesn't actually have any data in it, so this will just be a blank file. This is just provided because some people don't know how to create MC function files, but in reality they're just text files, just with a different extension. So in our init file, we're going to want to type these commands. Now, what these commands up here are doing is they actually are setting up things called scoreboards to hold values that we need for our gun. The important things to understand is that we're storing a value to detect when the gun is shot, and that value increments every time we right click with a carrot on a stick. because that is the only thing we can detect the player right-clicking that doesn't have an alternate function. We also have a scoreboard for counting the gun cooldown, and then we have these two scoreboards which don't actually account to anything, but they can be used later if you feel like you need to add limits to your gun. And this is just to give us a max ray trace count and a ray trace count that we are currently ray tracing. And then because we have those, we set up a quick limit. We set ray max to 100, and we set global, a fake player named global, to 100. If you want to know why we have to do all that, it's covered in the supplemental document. So let's move on to testing how we know that we've done all this correctly. So to make certain that we have successfully loaded our init file, we're going to want to type reload, and then to see if the scoreboards we added actually got loaded in by our init file, we're going to type scoreboard objectives list and just press enter. And as you can see there, we have our 4 scoreboards that we created, each displaying with their own display name and everything that we set them up to do. We can also check if global received his score by doing scoreboard players get global ray max, and we can see that global has 100 for ray trace max. Like I said, we won't be using ray trace max, but it's all set up here should you desire to take this any further. Alright, so the next thing we have to do is we have to create our main file. So the main file is set up to run every tick, and there are 20 ticks in a second, and so every piece of code we put in here is going to run every 20 seconds. So we can do this pretty quick. The stuff we want to put in the main file are these commands, and each of these is pretty simple in what we want them to do, but complex in how they do it. Basically, we're setting up a state for when new players join the game. We have to give them default values, otherwise the gun will break without these values. We also want to do something if they fire the gun, and we want to do something if the gun needs to be reloaded. And then at the end, we always reset gunshot back to 0, otherwise it locks on to 1. And I mean, we could clean that up here, but I decided to leave it here because it doesn't matter. And so a quick explanation of how these commands work. This execute command is executing as all players, and then we do at that individual player unless their score for ray trace count matches greater 0 or greater than 0, and then we run that state. So all we're doing with these execute commands is some logic to say I want to do all players, and for each player that we find I want to make sure that the ray trace count is greater than or equal to 0, and if it's not, then let's set up their default values. For these, it's basically the same. We are just finding all players, and as each player, this part's a little more complex. All we're doing is we're specifying specific things about the player that we want to select. It's not super important that you understand how this part works, because it's not necessary. I put this in here because I didn't want every carrot on a stick to be a gun, just the one that we decide to be a gun. All you need to know is we're saying here if the player is holding the carrot on the stick that we want, meaning it has custom model data, this. We also can check their scores in this selector, but it's not entirely important that you understand how that works, because we can also just, like we showed up here, do logic in the execute command itself. This is just a faster way to do it, and whenever I do logic that whittles down any player, I usually put it inside of logic that's already choosing specific players. But essentially this command is saying, as every player, for each player who is holding our gun and has a gun cooldown score of 0, and they have shot their gun, so they've shot their gun at least once, run the function states gun fired. The next one is very similar. It's every player, each player holding our gun. However, now we're testing if they have a cooldown score of greater than 1 or equal to it, and for each of those who does have that, we do the same check here. This is actually redundant, so if you want you can remove this, it's not important, but I put this here to show that these are the same logic. You could get rid of, you couldn't really get rid of this one easily, because you'd also have to get rid of this up to here and just leave this whole selector there, but this logic is basically equal to this logic. And so if our gun cooldown is greater than 1, we want to reload that gun for that specific player. And then, like I said, this just resets all players' gunshots at the end of the tick. And to demonstrate in a more visual way of what this is doing, I'll just play a simple command in Minecraft really quick. So to kind of demonstrate what this execute command is doing, we're going to execute as all entities, so not just players. This is going to include slime, sheep, everything. And then we're going to run, probably just say hi. I usually use hi for my debug stuff. And so you'll notice that every slime, pig, sheep, chicken, donkey, everything, and me, we all said hi. That's because this format of command actually, whenever you're running a command with multiple selectors, it splits it up from that point into multiple commands. So when we run @e, it's running as every entity, which is why we can also do @s, which selects the command executor, and it will give us the same output as you saw there. It's a bad example. We'll say hi too. So yeah. If that doesn't make sense, there's more description on that in the document, and the Minecraft wiki is a good resource. Now, whenever you write a piece of code, especially an entire function like this, you'll usually want to test it at the end like we did with our init function. There's no good way to do that with the code we have here. We could obviously test to see if our gunshot value is set to 0, but that's not really a good way to just check it. So instead we can put at the top of the function something like, say, Minecraft, I don't know, and save that. Then we can head back over to Minecraft, and in Minecraft we can just quickly type reload, and you'll notice that we get spammed really fast with Minecraft. Even if we ran that command to make everything say hi, it very quickly starts to get cleared out. And this is showing that that main function we wrote is running every tick. So we're going to want to go back and remove that, but this shows that we set up our main file correctly. So if you try this and it starts spitting out whatever message you told it to say, you know that you're good to go and move on to the next step. So now that we're sure that our main file works, we've gone back and we've deleted that debug data, we can actually come back to our file browser, and we've done everything we need to do for this part. So our top folder is done. We could even delete template data, doesn't matter. So we're going to go into states and we're going to create a new state. And we're going to call it new join. So this is our new function holding our state, and all we need to do to get the state to work is we need to put this code in it. All this code does is it sets default values for our player, and luckily for us, we know that all of this will work. You'll notice we're only selecting the person who's running the command. We know that'll work because back here we went to all players, but we only ran the command on each player who didn't already have a score set up. So since we've done that, we know that we can set up default scores for all of these, and that's pretty much that. So let's head over to Minecraft really quick and make sure that this works. Okay, so we're back in Minecraft, and to ensure that our code worked, we're going to reload. Reloading just reloads our data pack and make sure any changes we've made are added into the game. And then to check, we want to see if our score has been updated. We can do add-s since we're running the command. We're going to check ray count because that was one of the default values we set. And as you can see, our player, or me, has a 0 ray trace count, which is exactly what we want to see. If you didn't do this right, you'll see an error like this red one up here. You can see that I actually made a mistake and I had to re-record this. But if you get this red text, it's because you entered something wrong, or if you're like me, you named your function incorrectly, and you'll just want to go back and make sure that everything looks similar to the way mine does. We're going to make the gun shoot in this step. So let's get another copy of our template, and we're going to name this gun underscore fired. And we're going to start here. Okay. So if we look at this code, it's pretty simple. We reset whatever player has shot their gun to their ray count score to 0. We play a sound, and I just decided to play the zombie hitting an iron door sound. And then we use some new options in our execute command here. As previously discussed, the @ option changes the position to play at our executor. Technically, we don't need these parts because we did them back in main, but I'm keeping them here for clarity's sake. In a final version of code, I might remove them just because they're redundant. But this part we do need. We anchor the command to be at the position of the player's eyes, and we also test if the block the player's in is a penetrable block, and this is one of those tags that is actually stored back here in blocks. You can open this up and try and see how it works. It's got a lot of blocks in there that need to be penetrable, but not all of them. So if you can figure out how it works, you can add some more blocks to penetrate. Like I don't have tall grass in there, but it'll go through all kinds of air because there's actually 3 kinds and lots of other stuff too. It also tests to make sure there's no entity directly inside the player. This might be redundant at this point, but it's still here. It's left over from back when it was harder to do this, and I haven't really, there's no good way right now to make sure if this is useful or not. And finally, we run a position command, this time using rotational positions that push our command forward in relative to the player's rotation by 1. And then we start our gun ray trace substate. And then finally, after the ray tracing's over, we set our gun cooldown to 3. Since this is a pistol, I set the cooldown pretty low. Setting it to 0 is pretty nuts. You can fire basically 20 shots within a second. It's closer to a machine gun, honestly. And so, since I was deciding to design a pistol, I set it to 3. If you're doing a sniper, you might want to set it bigger. If you're doing, I don't know, it's up to you. With 3, you can fire about a little over 6 shots per second. Okay, so this is all the code you need for gun fired, but we're not done yet because we still need to make our substates for ray tracing and also whenever the gun hits an actual entity. So we're going to move on to that next. So to do that, we're going to want to create another MC function file, and this one is going to be named simply gun underscore ray trace. Luckily for us, this part sounds like it's going to be pretty complicated, and the code might look complicated, but it's actually not that bad once you break it down. So to explain this part, all we're doing is every time the ray trace runs, we increment the player's ray count by 1, and every time we do a ray trace, we're just going to play a little mycelium particle. I picked this particle because I think it looks nice for a bullet trail. You don't have to have a bullet trail, but it really shows off what the ray tracing is doing, and so I kept it in for this tutorial. We're using position again. This time we're using relative positioning to just move the command slightly over. And when we do that, we test for any entity within a very small box that is undead. This is another tag that you can find and look at. And this is a complete tag. It has all the undead that are currently in the game, including phantoms, which are undead for some reason. Now, if it did happen to find an undead, then it will run a new substate that we'll have to create in a minute to hit the undead and damage it. Much like that command, we have another one, but instead of finding undead, we're actually finding not undead. That's what this does here. And we're looking for, we also don't want any items, we don't want any armor stands, we don't want any item frames, we don't want arrows, and we don't want players. Players are more complex, and since this gun is designed for single player, not super important. And then, since we're executing as these people, I just run these commands at them as well. Not necessary that you have to do this, but it might be useful if you want to do any special effects when you hit the entity. And so this will run another substate that we have hit the entity, which we'll do in a second. After we figure out if we hit any entities, we then go down here and we test to see if we've hit any blocks. And if we've hit blocks that are not penetrable, so unless the block is penetrable, then we will play a sound of trident hitting. It just makes a little like ting sound where it hits. You probably won't be able to hear it. If you were playing a multiplayer and you shot at a player, they'd definitely hear it. So first we play the sound, and then we play a little dust cloud particle. Dust clouds, they're kind of weird. If you want more information on how this works, check the document. There'll be a link to the particle command there. You can also just probably look up another video specifically on this command because it's pretty special. So then the last thing we do is we check so essentially if we are in a penetrable block, so we haven't hit a solid block, then we move the command forward by 1 again, and we run this state, this ray trace state again. And this basically locks us into a loop of constantly moving forward and running all these commands every time we move forward. So we test at every step if we hit something, and we test if we hit a block. And if not, if we haven't hit a block, we do it again. As soon as we hit a block, it's over, it's done. So now we're going to move on to hitting entities. So to do this, it's actually extremely simple. We just set up another MC function, and we just type gun underscore hit underscore entity, and we're gonna open that up. And so if we check in here, we're actually only running one command, and so you could argue that this doesn't need to be part of a substate, but if we wanted to do anything else in here, like play a sound or play, like, you could even do blood particles or things like that, you know, anything you want to do, then you would have to put that in here. So I put it in a substate so that if you guys feel like you want to get any more creative or extra with your guns, you can do that. So this is all you have to do in your gun underscore hit entity. So just make sure that you have this command in there, and that should be good. Now for this last part, we need to just make a quick little hit undead state. It is the exact same as an entity state, so just copy the gun hit entity state and just change the last part to undead. And with this, we can now quickly change instant damage to instant health, because for undead enemies, these effects actually affect them in the opposite direction. It's inverted. And just a quick rundown, all we're doing here is we're giving the entity that we hit the effect of instant health for 1 second with strength level 2. The minimum strength is 0, so that'd be like instant damage 0, and we're hiding the particles that spawn from that. Right now, with the way this gun is set up, it basically instant kills almost everything, because go OP or go home, I don't know. But if you don't want to instant kill everything on both hit entity and hit undead, just change this 2 to 0. It's probably the best, or if you want it to be relatively strong, set it to 1. But other than that, that is everything we need to do for our gun ray trace. So let's hop back into Minecraft and see if we can get this to work. So now to test our gun, we actually have to give ourselves our gun, and you're going to want to put in this command, which I will put in the description of this video because it is extremely long to just type by hand. But essentially all we're doing is we're giving ourselves a carrot on a stick, and it's a custom one that has a name of example gun, and then the important part is that it has this custom model data of, like, I think it's 20,000,001. And so once we have all of this, we can just press enter. We'll get this carrot on a stick, but it is no ordinary carrot on a stick, because if we type reload to get our new Datapack stuff, then we can actually shoot our gun. Now you'll notice that it shot once and now it's not doing anything. It did work, it did kill our entity that we aimed it at, but now we can't shoot it again. And this is actually because of that gun cooldown that we set. If we set it to 0, we would be able to spam this gun and we wouldn't have any problems. But since we have a gun cooldown and we actually want to limit the player from how often they can shoot, we're going to have to go back and write our cooldown state really quick. But it's super small, super simple, and if you made it past the last step and got this to work, then this part should be more than easy. Alright, so we are coming to our last step here. It's going to be really easy compared to our last one, and all we need to do is take another copy of our template file, rename it to gun underscore reload, and let's go in and edit that. Okay, and again, this just has one command in it. I put it in a substate because you may want to do more while the gun's reloading. You never know. But for now, this is all we need, and all it does is it removes incrementally 1 from our player's gun cooldown scoreboard. And so once that hits 0, they should be able to fire again, and that's in essence it. So we'll head back over to Minecraft and we'll test this command now. Okay, so we're back in Minecraft, and as always, we're going to reload. Once we've reloaded, our gun cooldown should have gone down to 0. We can actually see this by typing scoreboard, objectives, set display, sidebar, gun cooldown. So you'll notice on the side we're displaying cooldown now, and if we right click, you can see that it counts up and then it quickly counts down. And we can do this over and over. It still shoots pretty dang fast. In fact, I don't know, that might be faster than 6 per second, but I didn't calculate the math to be exact, and Minecraft simulations aren't always perfect. But hey, that's working pretty good. And at this point, we've got everything for our gun. Like, there's really nothing else that you'd have to do at this point. Hopefully you were able to take something from this and learn so that you can do more with it. One thing you could try and do is add like a clip or ammo system. I've done an ammo system in a project I'm working on recently. And or if you're good with resource packs, since we used custom model data, you can actually load in a custom resource pack. And this one, I actually tied it specifically to model data. If we go and we grab another carrot on a stick, you'll notice that normal carrots on sticks, they don't actually have any custom model to them. But our gun does, even though it really is just, in essence, a carrot on a stick. And so this is pretty cool. I think it looks cool at least. You can add custom sounds with resource packs and stuff like that too. But that's the end of this tutorial, and at the very least, you'll have a custom gun if everything went well for you. And hopefully you were able to take a little bit more away from this so that you could generate even more with data packs from this point on. I know this was kind of brief, but if you want to see more from me, or you feel like you have certain things you want to see made in Minecraft quick, or even a more in-depth explanation on guns like rocket launchers or things like that, I've done that too. Leave a comment, like and subscribe, and with that, thanks for watching.